Chapter 28. Karak stepped into the cabin, his boots splashing on the muddy floor. The scent of fear and human waste filled the room, reminding him of the old days in the dragon army. He grimaced, guessing the source of the smell before he swallowed. Slaves, he said. Brutal iron chains held 6 small children against the far wall. Their clothes were in tatters and their bodies were filthy. Their skin stretched tight over fragile bones. The blue light shimmered around the chains that held them. Karak shuddered. How could there be slaves here? Dreadcutter boomed. Gnolls almost always keep slaves, Karak said, though the gnolls weren't the only foul creatures to do so. Harold rushed forward. We have to help them. Wait, Karak grabbed around. The chains have some kind of enchantment on them. The blue light flashed, and a ragged girl screamed in pain. The toddler at her feet cried silently, his voice gone and tears dried up. Karak, we have to do something, Eric said. She tried to pull away from him. Of course we do. Karak shoved her into Mud's arms and strode forward, drawing his swords. Don't kill us, the boy said. Gaunt face and hopeless eyes screamed. I'm not going to hurt you, Karak said. I'm just going to cut the chains. He hoped that was possible. There was no telling what kind of enchantment lay on them. But as he looked into the children's faces, he felt their pain, their fear, and their hunger. His heart screamed out that he must help them. He swung both swords together at the top of the chain, near where it was attached to the walls. A bright light flashed just before its blades made contact with the iron. The swords flew from his hands. Hair and Mud ducked just in time to avoid them as they whizzed overhead, clattering against the far wall, and fell to the ground. Mud straightened and pulled out a small black bundle. Let me handle this, Karak. Karak stepped away. His arms tingled from the force of the shock that had struck the swords from his hands. The children whimpered as Mud knelt next to the toddler and inserted a set of lockpicks into one of the manacles. The light flashed again, sending Mud spiraling. Karak shook his head and retrieved the swords while Mud fished along the dirty ground to regain his lockpicks. Look at this, Aaron said. His voice quivered. He stood next to the wall beside the passage that he had come from. His fingers traced another set of runes into the stone. What does it say? Max asked. Aaron's eyes grew wide and his hands shook. He read the runes. It says, to free the captives, you must have love enough to take their place. Karak swallowed. Look there, Aaron said, pointing to the wall next to the children. An empty pair of manacles hung beside the little girl. I don't like the sound of them, Mud said. Tears sprang into Harold's eyes. We have to do something. We can't just leave them like this. Help us, the girl pleaded. The others who were old enough to talk joined in the cries. Save us, please. Karak wiped his swords clean and sheathed them. The dragon pendant hid somewhere in the cave waiting for him. With it he could become what he was born to be. The majestic grandeur of the silver dragon would be his. He would fly above the clouds. He would spread silver wings beneath the sun. He would finally be free from the dark misery his life had been. The fire of the dragon's compulsion burned through his mind. With the help of Mud and the others he would gain the dragon pendant. But he knew as soon as they found it, he would take it, fighting and killing Mud, Dreadcutter, Irridin, and Hera if necessary. The thought of it froze his heart. He would gain the life he wanted at the cost of ending theirs. Hera moved over to the children, offering them food and water, washing the littlest boy's face. Her golden hair glimmered in the torchlight. She was so beautiful, so compassionate, and so open, it made Karak's heart ache. Mud stood beside her, reassuring the children that they would find some way to break the enchantment. Dreadcutter stared down at Karak. You're the magic user. Think of something. Growling, Karak flung himself across the room and snapped the manacles around his wrists. He would free the children even if it meant spending the rest of his journey chained in this filthy cavern. At least then he would have done one good thing with his life. As soon as the cold metal closed around his wrists, a blue light flashed, blinding him, searing through his flesh and bones. He fell to his knees, clutching his hands together in pain. Sweat drenched his body. Crack! Harris screamed. The weight of the manacles disappeared from his wrists, and something sharp pressed against his palms of his hands. Karak's soft fingers brushed his cheek. Karak blinked his eyes until he became reaccustomed to the dim cavern. Hera crouched in front of him. The children's cries and whimpers had ceased. He looked over his shoulder and found them gone, along with the chains and horrible smell that had filled the chamber. Are you all right? Hera asked. Karak swallowed the lump in his throat and stumbled to his feet. An illusion, Dreadcutter said, thumping his axe handle on the ground in disgust. Karak choked. The chains hadn't stopped him from hurting the others. There was nothing left to save them. He hadn't even saved the children, since they had not been real. Light gleamed from between his fingers. He opened his hands and found a small piece of silver, like the one Mud had retrieved from the ceiling over the chasm. Mud stepped forward and lifted it from his palm. Looks like we passed test number 2. Crack did it! Hera cried. She wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug. Her brown eyes looked at him with love and acceptance. He touched her golden hair and then pushed her gently away. If she knew who he truly was, she wouldn't look at him like that. Mud fingered the 2 pieces of silver key while Hera hovered next to Karak. Mud couldn't blame her for liking him. What Karak had done was brave and noble. The shards of silver fit together, but would not stay. Another part of the key was still missing. Mud could picture it in his mind. He put the 2 pieces in his pocket and cleared his throat. We should keep going. Yes, Karak said, moving half-dazed to a hole in the far wall. The magic might have only been an illusion, but it had not left him unscathed. Even in the dim light, Mud could see them from look and pain in his eyes. Mud let him lead, followed by Hera, then Iriden, and Drake Cutter. The hole led to a smooth, round passage that was carved out rather than a natural part of the cave. The ground was even and free from debris. Mud's boots tapped against the rocks as he walked along. The sight of those starving children had not left him untouched either. What really bothered him was that he had almost lost Karak. If it hadn't been an illusion, Karak might have been chained in that horrible cavern forever. Mud shuddered. No matter how hard he tried not to care about people, he still did. He knew it was good that the others had come with him, but the thought of him dying left his mouth dry and made his heart pound. He eased the puzzle out of his pocket and fiddled with it in one hand in the light from his lantern. Drake Cutter stopped in his track, and Mud thumped against the door in surprise. Mud looked up from the puzzle and found everyone standing in front of the stone wall. The passage had reached a dead end. Look, it's a mirror, Hera said. Her high-pitched voice echoed along the passage. She pointed to a tall silver mirror embedded in the rock. Karak each back to stand beside Mud. There were runes above the mirror, he said, holding his lantern high. The 3rd test. Mud slid the puzzle into his pocket. What does it say, Iriden? To go beyond, you must face the truth and embrace it. Wonder filled Iriden's voice, and he pushed past Hera to stand in front of the mirror. Mud, come look at this, Hera said. Mud stepped up beside Hera. In front of her, Iriden stared into the mirror. His reflection in the glass showed a slender elf dressed in pristine white. A braided gold belt hung at his waist, and the medallion of the platinum dragon shimmered at his neck. His stance was graceful and proud. His long, silvery blonde hair hung clean and loose. He held a book in his hands, and his eyes were riveted on the pages. His back was half turned to a ragged human family that gestured in supplication. The woman held a little boy whose arm was twisted at an angle, broken most likely. They pleaded for help in silence. All the time, Iriden's eyes stayed on the book, unaware of their pleas. No, Iriden cried. That's not me. It was me, but I'm not like that anymore. I would help them. I swear I would, even if they are humans. He reached out to the mirror as if he could snatch the book out of its reflection's hand. His fingers touched the glass and sank into it. Iriden jerked his hand back. To go beyond, you must embrace the truth, he whispered. All right, I admit it. I have been blind to people of other races. I see them now, but it doesn't mean that's how I have to be in the future. He took a deep breath, stepped into the mirror, and vanished. End of chapter 28.